Welcome to Learn Smart Coding, the ultimate destination for mastering cutting-edge tech skills. From front-end framework to the back-end system, our video covers it all. With real-time demos and in-depth tutorials, we'll teach you how to code like a pro. Subscribe now and start your journey to becoming a smart coder. Hello everyone, this is Developing .NET 7 Apps with Docker Part 2. We are going to explore the logging and how you can achieve the good logging with the Docker. And let's get started. So let's do step by step, right? So I'm gonna show a basic web API application that I already built. Okay, so that's the application that you're seeing. It's running in the Docker. I've already installed Docker, like we saw in the previous video how to install Docker, right? So let's explore what this application is. So basically it has a get endpoint and a post endpoint. Get will give you a list of products, and post is just going to give you a GUID, but eventually we will solve it as and when we develop. But this is a basic to working endpoints. All right, so if you look at the controller, you saw this product controller, right? And there is another controller called quick order controller. So under this product controller, basically we have the iProduct logic, right? So in order for us to log, generally what we do, we use the inbuilt logging mechanism called ILogger, right? So that's the extension of the logger class of the .NET Core. So if you use ILogger and then followed by, you can cast it to the class that you're logging. So if you do though, if you do it in this way, what you have to do, you need to have this logger, and then you need to have a private field. So only then you can use the logger.log information and you can log some information. So this is how you do, right? And if you go to any of these classes that are already there, it has a similar mechanism. It has the logger of that particular class. It is having an injected field, and then you can use the logging in any of your classes, right? But now if you see the program, we also have two services that is being added as a scoped lifetime. And what else we have? We have an endpoint which is calling these get products for the category. So you pass the category and it will give you a bunch of product based on the category. We have other good projects in our repo, right? Where you deal with the products category and all those stuff, right? So this is what it is. So currently it has a hard-coded information is really not coming from DB. That's okay. We want to start with one by one. So we simply have a very basic program, right? Very basic information in this project. That's absolutely fine. So we have gone through all this structure, and you see this. There's a link I've given. If you go to the link, that's basically tells you what is the create builder is used for. So create builder is basically, if you go to the website, so it will take you to this website, okay, the generic host of the .NET Core application. So basically this create builder is a kind of a mechanism where it tells you which and all needs to be taken in order for the configuration. Okay, so that is what this basically the URL that I've given will show you. And if you change the version, you will get to know what are those information. So now we are back to the Swagger. I'm going to execute this this two endpoints, and now this application is running in the Docker mode, right? So the Docker is the launch file of this application. So if I open up the Docker desktop, as and when I type there, like as and when I execute the APIs, you can see the logs coming up here. Okay, so learnsmartcoding.api is a new project that has the Docker information. And in order to show you, to minimize this, so if I just minimize this and I run, see the logging is coming as and when I execute the APIs, right? So basically you can see this logging information in your Visual Studio Code as well as the Visual Studio, and also because the Docker is enabled, it is also displayed in the Docker desktop under the logs. All right, so so now let's add the exception handling in our existing project, the new project that we just saw, right? So if you scroll down to the program.cs, there's something called a middleware custom exception handling middleware class. So this class, if you go, you will have the request and the response delegate. So the request delegate is because it's a middleware, right? So the calls will go through this, so it has to handle it. And then what it is basically doing is if there is any exception, it will try to find whether the exception is an application type exception or any other exception. If it is any other exception, we will show them as a 500 error and a basic information. We suppress this the actual log trace, right? The stack trace, we suppress it. And if it is not, we will show them a found error. And if it is development environment, this Swagger UI will come. If it is not a development environment, the Swagger UI will not come. Let's say I give some random stuff in the get product. The category is not valid at all. So it was giving us 400 error. But we have something called kayaks. And if you specifically tell about this category, we have throwing the exception. So that's why it is getting caught as 500. And this will tell you clearly, right, two different exceptions, and all the logs are written here. All the logs are written here. It will give you a bunch of information. So, this will help you to see what's going on. So the next thing that we will see is how to use the logging framework like SeriLog to leverage more logging facilities, right? So we can enhance our logging by using the logging framework. So what I'm going to show you is the SeriLog. It's a very famous one. There are other equivalent stuff like ILogger and other logging mechanism, but it's okay. Let's focus on the SeriLog. So now we will install the SeriLog related packages and see how to configure this using the Visual Studio Code. You can do the same thing in Visual Studio, or you can use the complete code from the GitHub repository that I will give. But I would suggest you to follow what we are doing, so you will have an hands-on on your Docker education. Alright, so if you type .NET add package serilog.asp.NET Core, it will install the packages required for the SeriLog. So that's the first package. The second one is, again, we have to add the packages serilog.enrichment. So that's another one. We will show you what is this enrichers .environment will do. So package serilog.enricher.environment will also install and also bring up the dependent DLLs, the packages. Now these two are ready. Now let's go to the SeriLog documentation. If you see the documentation for the .NET Core, it is clearly written what you need to do. They are starting with the logging, and then you have a try catch in the final block, and we're going to do the same thing. Okay, so the first thing is we will use the assembly name, put it in a variable called name, and then this code, a piece of code that I copied from the documentation, right? So this, we have to bring up the namespace, the SeriLog and serilog.events. Once you bring up, these errors went. Alright, now let's cut the remaining information and put it in the try catch block, like how they have done it, right? So all these full of code will be done it here. This is all because we are using the latest framework for 3.1 and leisure version, which is out of support. You have startup and configure services class, but don't worry, let's focus on this, right? So I've put all these things inside this try catch. Now in the try, we will add a log.information and then followed by the data. Now what we will do is we will use the builder.host and then include the use SeriLog method. You need to call this method. Okay, this is very important so that the SeriLog will kick in. So that's why I've added a command called add this line. So you added this line, and if you look at line number 16 to 20, that's the log level information, right? If you look at this, we have enrich.from log context. The context will be recorded, and then we will also include something called .enrich.with mission name. The mission at which this container or this application is running, that name is recorded, so that your application is deployed in different containers, different missions. You will see logs are coming from which mission. Okay, now also we will also apply with property and then the name of the assembly. And when I say assembly of your project name, that's the assembly, right? So we are logging that as well. Now let's go to the app setting.json, remove all the loggings. Okay, these loggings are not required, so let's remove this. Let's go to the development, remove it from here as well, right? So we removed these two, we added the try catch black and the proper handling in the main program. Now go to the debug and run. You see this, if you follow exactly like this, you might face a similar problem. But if you remember the previous clip, we showed you if you open up this project from the first, on the right hand side, it show you to install the C# extension and the Docker container, right? So Docker container is already installed. You just need to install the C# extension. So the C# extension is also installed. So just open up the project. It will ask you whether the VS Code latest stuff needs to be installed or not. So what we are going to do is, let's close this solution. Okay, let's open up the solution in the Visual Studio Code one more time. Okay, the reason I'm showing all of these things is you might also face the same thing the first time. See, right now it is not there and it started popping up right to the right side in the bottom. You see this required assets to build and debug are missing, which is nothing but the VS Code related launch files and the task files, right? So now you got to see the launch.json and task.json is added. If you have followed the previous one, you just need to copy paste the Docker information in the launch file. I'm going to do that. Okay, so only then the launch settings of the Docker will come. Right now, I just launched it in the .NET Core web app, which means it's not running in the Docker. This application is not running in the Docker, though we already have a Docker file. Alright, so let's go to the launch.json, and I actually copied the stuff that I already have it, and you see this Docker information is already added, and even the Docker server ready action which will launch the Swagger is also added now. Alright, so it's all same, it's there. Now I'm choosing the Docker as the launch file, and what we will do, we will also go through. Alright, so under the task, all this information are there, and I just launched it, so it started giving me logging information in the blue color, right? You can see that in the debug console. I'm gonna bring up the Swagger UI, which is sitting in the separate browser. See, I brought up the one which was already launched in the separate one. So if I click on any of these endpoints, ideally logs will come here. Alright, so you can see I minimized it. I'm doing some information, even the exception is coming, all good. So the logging is working good with the SeriLog. Okay, we know how to do it in the Visual Studio Code as well. Even if you run this the same thing directly in the Visual Studio, it will work. So we started using the SeriLog, right? So let's take a look at the difference between the static log and the ILogger. So if you look at the first one that I explained you, we were using the ILogger, which means you need to inject this in the constructor, and then you should also need to assign a private field, right? So line number 13, line number 15, there was an injection. There was an assignment in line number 18. Only after that you can actually use the logger, right? But if you look at the SeriLog, right, it's very easy. You can use directly a static file, a static class called log information. So you just need to bring up the namespace, and you see this is the beauty of the SeriLog. See, there's a plus and minus, like a pros and cons. If you're not using this. So now similarly, if you go to the different controller, I can also change this to the SeriLogging. I can use the SeriLog, or you can use the default ILogger, but I prefer to use the SeriLog. It has a lot of advantage compared to ILogger, right? But for time being, for the demo purpose, I will leave the rest of the class as it is. That's absolutely fine. But this is how you will use, and this is the difference between both the logging. And if you run this application in the logger, it will show you all those logs that was written. Okay, you don't need to have a separate injection, dependency injection and all those stuff. It will just show you all the logging information. Let's say I open up this, right, and let's clear all of these. Okay, so I'm going to open up the Swagger, and if I hit the endpoint, you can see the logging information coming up here. See, all the logs started coming up here, which is good, right? So there is no difference, so we can use the SeriLog as well. And let's try out some bad information, and let's see what kind of exception happens. See, right now it goes to the first exception, which is the 400, and you can see a bunch of information is written in the log, right? So that's one of the beauty of the SeriLog, where you can use just a static class, log class, and you can log everything. So now let's improve the logging much more and more. I'm going to use something called SeriLog sink.seq. SeriLog sink.seq is basically, if you go to this documentation URL, right, so this is the information that I've provided. If you go here, this is basically a centralized logging mechanism. Okay, that's coming up from the dataless.com/seq. If you go here, it's already the sink.seq is the special one that I'm looking, SeriLog.sink.seq. There are other stuff also, if you can see the whole scroll bar, but by the time of recording, see, already 44 million people have downloaded this, right? So it's vastly used. This is basically a centralized logging mechanism. As when you see the demos in my course, we will use multiple projects, right? So multiple projects will write logging mechanism. So how do you do that? Let's install the seek in the container. Like how do we have to do all these things, right? So what we have to do is, for installing the SeriLog takes, that which is a centralized one. So if we have more than one application, all the logs are written in one single centralized place. For development purpose, SeriLog.seq is free, but for production purpose, this is not free. So remember that this is not free for production. There is a license agreement, but you know. So let's focus on what we wanted for this demo, right? So let's go to the command prompt. Okay, open up the command prompt. You can use the Windows PowerShell. I'm using the Windows PowerShell. So just follow these commands to install the SeriLog seek in your local development environment. So for that, first thing that you have to do is docker space pull space data list slash seq. That's the image name. Don't worry about this docker image and all those stuff. Just please follow these commands. First install this seek in your development environment. Then in the next video you will see how to use all these things. What is image, what is docker, all those information you will come to know, right? So let's focus on this now. As we speak, it's getting installed. So basically what it is doing is the whole bunch of thing that is required for the SeriLog seek to run from the local, that has been pulled from this particular image, and then you need to use this command. So the command is basically docker space run -d stands for detached mode, name of the seek, which is seek-dev, and then we will restart unless it is stopped. And then this is the port mapping. -p means it's a port mapping. -p followed by the port and then the container port. The container is 80, that's why 5341 mapped to the 80, and then we provide this password, and we will also sign for an agreement, accept LR is equal to Y, and then followed by the version of the seek, right, which is data list slash seek, which is 5.1. So just use this command. I will provide this command in the readme file of the project or in the description. So once you're done with this, right, so it's already showing the status as downloaded the newer image for the data list seek, which is 5.1 version. Now all what you need to do is you can start running the application, and you can see how the logging is working in the seek. Now the SeriLog sink.seq is installed. All what we have to do is go to this application and just add that sink. Okay, so here if you see write to .seek and then the server URL. Okay, server URL is the host.docker.internal in the port is 5341. Now there was some error coming up, so we are missing the packages. We will install the SeriLog.sink.seq package. Once you install this package, right, okay, let's say it's not running. So once you install this package, everything is looking good. You see this error went, and that's it, right? So the seek is now, the logging is now going to the seek, and there is another one called use custom logging. So I added this use custom logging, and I have given some blog links. Actually this goes to them. The AndrewLocus.net is one of the famous blog for the .NET. It shows you very good about the excluding the health check logging. So health check is basically when an application is running, the application is lively working or not, the health check mechanism will happen. We don't need to dump all those information, right? That's why we're excluding the health check stuff, and then we are also adding the request host and the user agent. All these informations are recorded in every single call that goes through, and if you open up the localhost 5341, which is the port address of the SeriLog sink.seq, right, the server which is downloaded and running from a local is working. Now as and when you run your application, now all the logs will come and sit here. Okay, so as and when you click on run any of your application endpoints, it'll come and sit here. So you can either refresh, or there's a refresh button in the top right side. You can do either of this, right? So the logging that we are doing is coming and sitting here. You see there was an exception, right? So this one is the 400 exception. So let's run this exception. Let's put something which will give us a 500 exception. So if we execute this also will give us a 500 exception. Now all this information are logged. What you can do is you can either refresh like this, or you can also refresh in the top right side. You see this, for this warning which is 400 error, it will show you in the orange color. For the exception, it will show you in the red color, right? So now right now we just have only one application that's logging into this SeriLog.sink. Seek is working perfect, all good. You will see the importance of the Seek as and when we develop more application to our project. So the next thing that we are going to see is the console application stuff in our project, as well as the background application, which is called worker application. So the one that you see as inverse generator as a console application, we'll talk about it, but let's add a worker application. Go and click on add new project and then click as worker service. If you search this, it'll give you a template. So we will name this project as learnsmartcoding.order processor. Okay, so once it's named, click on next, and here you click on enable Docker, choose the version which is 7.0 in our case. So the application is added. Okay, now if you look at this Docker file is like, it is almost same as the other Docker file. Let's focus on this worker application. If you go to this worker application, it has a background service. We have already seen some video about this background service, how it works, right? So this one is going to have the similar SeriLog information. So let's add certain packages. The first one, if you search with SeriLog, the one that we need is a SeriLog.sink.console. Like I said, this is a background application. It is not the API, so we need to install sink.console, and it will bring the SeriLog and other dependent packages. Alright, so that is done. The next one is the SeriLog.extension.hosting. Like I said, this is not the self-running application, so you need to add the extension.hosting packages. The next one is the enricher.enrichment, right? So we have to install the enricher environment variable, the packages. So I'll install that packages as well. And then the last one is the SeriLog.sink.seq, because we wanted to log all the information to the seek. It's a centralized logging information. Now the packages are installed. If you go to this main, I'm going to copy paste the similar code that we already saw in the web API. So basically here what we are doing is we're going to add some logging, and then we're going to copy this information, right? The logging information and the try catch block. We're going to put the same thing in the worker application as well, the worker service as well. So I'll copy this, go to this program.cs, paste it, and then do some adjustments so that the existing code will go inside the try block, and then the catch block will handle the logging, and finally the log will be flushed, right? So we will include use SeriLog after the configuration service. Alright, so the SeriLog is now hooked up. We will remove the logging in both the app setting files. It's done. Go to the worker.cs. We don't need this ILogger. We know how to use the static log using the log. Basically, we don't need this constructor itself. So we removed everything, right? A bunch of information is removed. Now, if you just say log.log information, bring in the SeriLog pack, the namespace, you're good. Everything is going to look same. So I'm going to put a breakpoint. We can also see what other packages are installed by going into the project. Double click on the project. Now I'll choose the Docker, run it. See, it came here. Let's remove the breakpoint. Let's run it. Every second this while loop will get executed because there's a delay of 1 second sleep. So you see this logging is coming, right? So you can refresh like this, or you can refresh to the top right side, and log started coming. Now what you need to understand is the console application, but the worker service, the web API, they're all now logging into the same single centralized logging place. That's what the importance of the SeriLog.sink. Now if you copy the similar packages to the console application, we can also start using the SeriLog for the console application as well. So let's do the similar work, whatever we did it. See, I just put a separate method for the configure logging. I moved a piece of code in, to a separate private method, but almost everything is same. So here, now let's summarize what we did so far in this video. So we were able to showcase how the logging works, how logging is important. How did we use the existing logging versus the SeriLog.logging, which is in external packages. We use the SeriLog.sink.seq. And we also built two different other console application and a background worker application, and every application were logging the information in the centralized place called SeriLog.sink.seq, right? So we have explored all these things. We know how this logging works, how important the logging, how do we run up the set up the SeriLog.sync in local, and that's what we did. And in the next part, we will talk about the configuration in the Docker based .NET application. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more tech tutorials. And don't forget to hit the bell icon to get notified when we post new videos. If you have any questions or suggestions, leave them in the comments below. Happy coding!